Desde el Centro de Madrid continuamos trabajando en el 7º Congreso Internacional en Gobierno, Administración y Políticas Públicas, y en esta ocasión le damos la bienvenida a Beth Noveck, directora del GovLab, amplia experta en Gobierno abierto, no solo teórico sino también empírico, e invitada especial del GIGAPP 2016.
So open government is about changing the relationship between the state and citizens. It's not a new idea. Citizen engagement has long been an ideal. But in an era of internet technology, in an era of big data and new communications tools, it's now becoming possible to revisit how the state works with citizens. Not just on election day, not just the notion that people should participate once a year at the ballot box, but how the administration of the state, how in day-to-day governance, we can engage more between institutions and the public to get good ideas, to get people's help, to get their know-how and their skills, to create a more collaborative environment in which citizens and the state are working together to solve problems. So it's not just about transparency, to be clear. It's not just about the state broadcasting to citizens how much it spends or what it does. It's actually about sharing what the problems are that need to be worked on and inviting help and collaboration, both in terms of policy proposals, but also in terms of actually doing work together, getting boots on the ground, as they say, really practical assistance from citizens, from organizations, universities, nonprofits, and companies, and creating more of a collaboration. And that is a fundamental culture shift between the way government has worked in the 20th century and how I hope it will work in the 21st century. I think, do any of us understand? I don't think citizens understand more or less than bureaucrats. I think we're all finding our way together to understand what this means and what this future looks like. But it's definitely not something we're used to, right? We're used to voting for politicians. We're used to having an administrative state of professional civil servants and to paying taxes with the expectation that government will be something that is done for us and to us. But we know that we can't deliver services as well if we don't participate in educating the civil service about how to deliver those services. Those of us who wait online in a government office to get a benefit or to receive health care or go to school all have something to share. We have experience and we have know-how that we can use to help improve how we deliver those services. Even on complicated issues of policy, foreign policy, economic policy, we have expertise widely distributed across society. We have academics in universities, we have business people in companies, we have students with a lot of deep knowledge from reading and from studying that they could bring to bear to help us improve how we do government today. And finally, we have the tools that could make that practical. So instead of just a theoretical idea that would be nice to do, it's now finally practical to do this, and that's what we have to figure out how to do. A lot of people use the term smart cities now often to mean a certain kind of technology, right? They're talking about the idea that if I put a sensor on a stop sign or on a red light, I will get data that will help me run my city better. But the smarts, the intelligence that we have in our cities, in our communities, isn't just from technology. It isn't just from the tools. It's actually from the people, and that's a sort of obvious point, but not one that we're used to making use of. So we have a lot of intelligence across the population, but we also, by the way, have a lot of intelligence across the civil service. And we shouldn't discount the fact that today, the way bureaucracy works is I have a title like assistant manager or deputy director, but that tells you very, very little about what I know. Maybe I have experience dealing with a public health crisis. Maybe I know something about how to program a computer. Maybe I've traveled to West Africa that might become a very useful skill, for example, when there's a crisis like Ebola. But we don't do a very good job now of making use of the talent that we have in government, And we definitely don't do a good job of making use of the talent that we have across the population to do a better job of how we do government. So that's a big change. First, to recognize and to trust that there is intelligence out there, and then to figure out how to make use of it and to make government more of a conversation and a collaboration rather than something that is done at citizens or to citizens. And it's a two-way process of learning. So the GovLab, or the Governance Lab, is an institute based primarily at New York University that we have collaborators around the world. It's a broader network of scholars and of activists. It's a combination really at the intersection between research and practice, where we're working to understand and to document and to help advance the use of technology to improve how we govern. So we really do three things at the GovLab. First, we are researchers, first and foremost. So we try to study and understand what's going on around the world in terms of the adoption of two kinds of technology in particular. Data, so big data, small data, the policies of open data. So how does data change how we govern? But also what's sometimes called the technologies of collective intelligence. In other words, the technologies for communication that help groups and that help people work together. So if you take that data.gov piece and that people.gov piece, part of what we do is to try to study what is the impact on governing and what's working and also what's not working. The second thing we do, though, is we also build a lot of technology. So we recognize that it's not enough simply to talk about or to write books about open data. We actually have to build tools. For example, we've built a platform called the Open Data 500 that we use to document and to collect and to partner with people around the world to tell the story of how companies are using data that's provided by the government, and to then document and visualize how that's creating jobs or economic growth. And then the third thing we do, in addition to research and building civic technology, is we do a lot of coaching and training. So again, we can talk about innovation in government, but the people, government's not going to change because we wrote a book or a white paper. It's going to change because people in the bureaucracy are doing things differently. And to help that process, we work with innovators around the world. We work with people in government, online, and people outside of government who are in turn working with government to help them do their projects. What we do is we provide support, we provide coaching, we provide training, we introduce people to mentors and to experts, and above all, we introduce people to each other who are working on common problems. So to give you one example, I just finished working on a course where we had 20 different teams of people working on innovations in criminal justice. They were primarily local and regional government officials or people in NGOs working on criminal justice, and we brought them together to encourage one another and to help them do their jobs more effectively. We're not from New York City going to change the way governments around the world work. We won't even change how New York City works. But what we can do is to help support and catalyze people who are doing the work day to day, and hopefully through connecting one to the other, we can actually bring about this move towards a more open government that we talk about. Well, we believe in what Kurt Lewin, back in 1946, he was a scholar at MIT, and he was writing, of course, just after World War II, and he famously said, "Books alone will not suffice." So he was responding to the crisis of Nazism in World War II, in which he and others recognized that it's not enough to sit in the ivory tower. It's not enough for an academic to simply sit in the library and write a book, especially for people who are interested in public policy and public administration and political science. I think it's fundamentally important, first of all, to understand the workings of the institutions we write about. So how do they work day to day? What are the jobs of people who work in these institutions? What are the challenges that they face as a practical matter? And second, it's important to understand how to write not only for other academics, not only how to write journal articles that we'll read for each other, but how do we write books, write blog posts, write white papers, make movies, create software, do whatever it takes to help to make the change real. And finally, for the changes that are happening, we have to commit to studying those changes. So there are lots of people who are innovating, who are opening up data, or who are running new kinds of engagement programs. And it's our job as academics, I believe, to study those processes and to try to understand what's working and to in turn share that back with people in practice. So again, we have a healthy and successful feedback loop between the academy and between governing institutions. So this is action research. I think a lot of people practice it and want to practice it, and we need more recognition, I think, for the people who do it. The journal articles and how many footnotes you have isn't the only thing that matters in the world. Ultimately, we like to say what matters is the lives of the people, the citizens, at the end of this process. So if we can write something that will help a government institution know how to better educate a child or how to better deliver health care that's going to improve somebody's life, that should be the real test of whether we're successful. Because ultimately our mission is to strengthen democracy and to serve the public good. And that should be the thing that we're counting. We try, and that's the goal, and that's the goal. In academia, it's very easy to get caught up in, citations and footnotes and downloads and journals and grants, but we keep reminding ourselves that at the end of the day, at the end of this, there are real people and their lives, and that should be the thing that matters. And we can and we should recognize that we have an impact and that we want to, and that's why we do this. Is to have an impact. So that should be the way that we're measuring our own success.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.